Welcome to the second of our bite-sized webinars on email deliverability. We spoke last time about how the job of ISP filters is to defend against spam emails and the importance of learning to love them, and in doing so, winning their trust. But of course, the key question is how do you convince these filters that your IP is valid and trustworthy? So, let's get right down to it and start by talking about reputation, how to build one, how to maintain it, and what to do if it becomes tarnished. Holly.
Well, firstly, it's a good idea to start any email campaign by sending small batches of emails and to ensure that you're sending these messages to addresses that you actually know are already engaged. Then, as these emails are received and opened by the engaged users, that's when your IP will start to build up trust, so to speak, with the ISP. You can then begin to slowly increase the number of emails until you scale up to your peak volume.
So basically, don't try to run before you can walk. If you go crashing in trying to blast everybody right out of the gate, you'll just scare the horses and end up trashing your reputation before you've even begun. So what about registering a subdomain just strictly for your email activity?
It's not something we necessarily recommend for everyone, I don't think, but you could maybe create a subdomain that is exclusively for email marketing purposes. Over time, users then will come to trust that subdomain, but it's not the main reason that you should do it.
So what is the main reason?
I think it's more that this subdomain will allow for domain-specific monitoring of your IP reputation, and from there you'll be able to succeed against some domain-based certification filters.
That sounds pretty sensible. What kind of vulnerabilities are emails susceptible to? And I mean, how does authentication even relate to this? Chris?
Basically, email messages contain two from addresses, the envelope from and the header from. The envelope from is the return address. It tells mail servers where to return or bounce the message back to. It's contained in the hidden email message header, which includes technical detail servers used to understand who the message is for, what software was used to compose it, etc. The header from address is an address contained in the from field of an email, which is visible to all email users. Both of these addresses can be spoofed by cybercriminals relatively easy. That's where email authentication comes in.
Right, okay. And would this be where sender policy frameworks or SPFs come into the whole situation here? I mean, what is an SPF?
Oh yeah, an SPF is an email authentication protocol that allows the owner of a domain to specify which mail service they use to send mail from that domain.
And how exactly do they do that?
Brand sending email publish SPF records in the domain name systems, the DNS. These records list which IP addresses are authorized to send emails on behalf of their domains. During an SPF check, email providers verify the SPF record by looking up the domain name listed in the envelope from address in the DNS. If the IP address sending emails on behalf of the envelope from domain is not listed in that SPF record, then the message fails SPF authentication.
And why would this be important?
A sender policy framework, or SPF, increases your trustworthiness in the eyes of the receiving email server. The server can cross-check the domain name against the associated IP address to make sure that it's legitimate. If you don't have an SPF in place, your emails might be rejected. An SPF protected domain is also much less attractive to phishers.
Okay, so this sounds a pretty solid solution and an absolute necessity, but I mean, are there any drawbacks to this, Holly?
It can be difficult keeping SPF records updated as brands, are going to change service providers and add mail streams due to lack of visibility. Also, just because a message fails SPF, that doesn't mean it's going to get blocked from the inbox. That's just one of several factors that providers take into account.
How about if messages are forwarded? I mean, do you still get protection then?
No, SPF breaks when a message is forwarded. It's also completely ineffective against cybercriminals who want to spoof the display name or the header from address in their message. And these are the most frequently spoofed from addresses since they're the ones that are most visible to the recipient.
So, there are pluses and minuses once again, and I suppose it's best to remember that an SPF is not completely foolproof.
No, absolutely not. But we would still recommend using one.
Right, of course. Okay, right, so I've built a reputation, and I'm protecting myself from cyber scammers as best I can. How do I determine what my reputation looks like? I mean, check myself before I wreck myself, so to speak. Because, I mean, the biggest reason why emails are not delivered is due to low sender score. I mean, ISPs will automatically reject any emails that fall below a certain score.
Well, you could use a sender score, which is produced by return path. Sender scores assign a number to every outgoing mail server. The score is calculated by using the traditional email metrics, such as unsubscribes and spam reports. We went over these in more detail in the previous webinar, so if you really want to know more about the scoring process...
Go back and listen to it on demand, yeah.
Exactly.
Also, you can check your feedback loops, or FBLs. Most major ISPs provide feedback loops in which the email sender can gain information from the recipients who have complained about that sender's email. So Yahoo, AOL, and Microsoft, they make it super easy to get this information. Gmail reported earlier this year they are testing a new feedback loop, but it's going to differ in that it does not use the traditional abuse reporting format, or ARF, of most FBLs. It's worth remembering, though, that only ESPs are allowed entry into Gmail's FBL program.
I'm guessing that these ESPs have nothing to do with Derek Acora.
Disappointingly, that is correct. No, an ESP in this context is a service that hosts email marketing services on their servers. Then they're specifically optimized solely for this purpose. So you can control your email marketing account and send out emails using a web browser interface, and then the ESP servers and internet connections are going to do all the heavy lifting for you. There are so many benefits to using an ESP, we could probably run a whole webinar just on that.
Yeah, and perhaps we will.
Suffice to say, if you can, it's always going to be best to employ the services of professional email marketing professionals wherever possible.
I almost feel like we should probably plug ourselves a little bit at this point.
Yeah, if you want to make sure your messaging reaches the inbox you're after, then you could do a whole lot worse than getting in touch with us.
Okay, right. But if you are intent on doing it yourself, let's talk about scheduling and how often you should send. Chris?
Yeah, absolutely. So one cause for a lower sender score and IP rejection would be random and erratic broadcast activity. If you're not maintaining a regular schedule with your emails, it creates sending spikes. Do your utmost to stick to a consistent email sending schedule.
And what about send frequency? I mean, how much is just enough and what's too much?
Well, too many emails can burn your subscriber list in quick time. Too few emails can kill your revenue.
So what would be the baby bear porridge of email sends?
The only way you can find the perfect number is by thoroughly testing, which isn't really easy. Plus it takes a long time, during which you can make some mistakes. A good benchmark is 1 email a week. You can try scaling up to twice weekly as long as you have really good content. You can even drop back to once a month without totally losing touch with your audience. But if you go anywhere outside those two boundaries, you're in pretty dangerous territory. Okay,
so like a lot of things here, testing is absolutely paramount, and you've got to ensure that you've got fresh, engaging content so people aren't getting bored and dropping out. What about the age-old question of opt-in? Single opt-in or double opt-in?
Well, the most popular form of opt-in would be the single opt-in, in which the user agrees to receive an email simply by checking a box, or leaving a pre-checked box checked. This might seem like a great strategy to harvest email addresses since it's easy and pretty much automatic. However, it can backfire by generating high amounts of spam complaints. Spam complaints are super dangerous. Some ISPs begin to block sending servers after as few as 2 or 3 spam reports per 1,000 emails. So the best way to defend against spam complaints is to use the double opt-in. All you do is send a confirmation email to the new subscriber in order to validate their address and gain their consent. In some European countries, Germany for example, double opt-in is now a mandatory requirement.
Right, and I guess with GDPR coming in, double opt-in is still one of the best ways that you're going to remain GDPR compliant, but that's a whole nother story.
It certainly is.
Okay, right, moving on. Let's talk about the purge. Holly, why do we purge?
Because, like we previously mentioned, if you're sending your marketing emails to non-existent users, you're going to ramp up your bounce rate and destroy your send credibility. So every now and then, go through and remove all inactive recipients from your list, filtering out all users who haven't opened or even clicked on your emails in a few months. According to Oracle, high hard bounce, or invalid, rates are the fastest way to trigger filtering and blocking on your new IP. You could use a paid service to clean all hard bounces before you launch a fresh marketing effort.
When you say could, I'm guessing you mean you should.
Pretty much, yes. And additionally, most email validation services are going to also catch duplicates and typos, outdated domains or do not email records, bogus addresses, and all other sort of common user errors as well.
Right, okay. So basically, cut the dead weight and soar all the way to email nirvana. Is there anything else that either of you would like to add that perhaps we haven't covered? Holly?
Yeah, I think it's important to note that people really need to filter contest entry email signups. This might sound a bit obscure, but the worst email lists are always created from giveaways or signups. People, true to their nature, are going to attempt to enter multiple times using invalid or non-existent email addresses. They don't actually care, believe it or not, about getting on your email address list. What they care about is a chance to win an Alexa or a gold-plated Monopoly set or, whatever. If you're using a contest or giveaway as a method of gaining email subscribers, then you need to vet this list super hard before dumping it into your subscriber list. It could be a source of hard bounces, which could land your IP on the naughty list.
Okay, so watch those competitions. All right, good shout. Chris?
I would say use branding in your from name. Using your brand's name in your from line will help to reduce spam complaints. It's also been proven to improve your open rates. Increasingly, some companies use a front person, an individual, to head up their email marketing in order to give it a more personal feel. You can still use this approach. Just add from blah blah after the individual's name.
Oh, and also from me, just make sure you're checking blacklists. If you're experiencing send problems, or even if you're not, it's always a good idea to check the blacklist. These DNS-based blacklists are created to protect users from IPs that have received a high volume of spam reports. You need to make sure your IP is not on that list.
Right, that does sound important. And how would you actually go about doing that?
It's actually really simple, I find. You can do a quick check on an IP using MX Toolbox. If you wanted to, you could sign up for a free monitoring service. And your email sender reputation is a major factor in determining whether or not the email you send is actually going to reach a user's inbox. So just guard it with your life.
Right, okay. Okay, well that's sort of about wraps it up, I think. Thanks as ever for your time, everyone, and thanks to you for bearing in and listening to this for the last 15 minutes or so. I hope it's been of use. I'd just like to say that in order for email marketing to be effective, the emails have to get delivered. That is basically step one. It's after that that you can start to explore your killer subject lines and creating all that powerful email content. And email marketing still works wonders, but you just have to get those damn things delivered.